Good evening, football fans. Big Al here on this Tuesday night, November 7th, 2023. It is election day. I hope you got the chance to get out and vote today. But again, we are not talking politics. We are talking college football. As tonight, we'll be taking a look at the second college football playoff rankings being released live here in about a minute. And then afterwards, we'll take a look at the Week 11 college football television schedule and all the announcers for every game. Now, I recorded a video earlier today about the 2023 Major League Baseball standings and leaders. That video is up now if you want to go ahead and watch that. And while we're waiting on the unveilment of the CFP playoff rankings or the CFP rankings, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell, get notified every time I go live. So, who do you think should be number one in this week's college football playoff ranking? Should Ohio State stay there, or should they move Georgia or Michigan or even Washington in that spot? Possibly even Florida State? Get at me in the comments section with your predictions. Okay. I have Chat Sports on my television, and they're unveiling the college football playoff top 25 here in just a moment. And while we've got a moment, I want to talk about a little change to the week that was. I have been writing down the statistical numbers for every game. Now I'm just going to get the information from the Sports Alerts app and just read out all the leaders from every team plus all the statistics from each game. Because it takes me a long time to write down all that statistical information. And I don't even get done till like late Wednesday night. So I've done away with that, and I'll just be reading off the stats and the team leaders for every game. Kind of like when I first started this channel back in 2020. That's what I was doing, so I'm going back to that. But that will be coming out sometime tomorrow. Sometime before, say, 3 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you join me tomorrow for that. Okay. Again, I got Chat Sports on my TV, waiting on the reveal of the college football playoff top 25, the second rankings of the season. And again, stay tuned for the Week 11 college football television schedule. So how's everyone doing tonight? You enjoyed the football last weekend? I enjoyed the NFL, especially with my Eagles beating the Cowboys. Now, some big games in the NFL this past week. We also had the Chiefs beating the Dolphins over in Germany. The Ravens using their ground attack to pound the Seahawks. And then Joe Shiesty's Bengals edged out Josh Allen's Bills on Sunday night. That was a pretty good game. And then in college, I watched my Wolverines destroy Purdue. Now we got Penn State coming up this week. That's going to be a tough game. So again, who do you think should be number one? Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, or Washington? As Ohio State was ranked number one in the first college football playoff rankings last week. We'll see if they can stay up there again this week. All depends on what the committee decides. All right, give me just a second and I'll be right back. All right, I had to grab my coffee. Left it sitting over on my nightstand. So I have to bring it over here. Elsewhere across sports, there's no action tonight in the NBA. There are no games scheduled, but you'll have 28 of the 30 teams playing tomorrow. You've got 9 games tonight in the NHL. One game that I want to watch is the Detroit Red Wings and the New York Rangers. That's going to be a fun one out at Madison Square Garden. That's coming up here in less than a half hour. I want to try and blow by this as quickly as possible. And then it's day 2 of the college basketball season. The Wolverines are playing tonight against UNC Asheville, but that game's not until 6:30 my time, 8:30 Eastern time. So I still have about 90 minutes until that game begins. So again, who do you think should be number 1? Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, or Washington? Let me know in the comment section. And they should start to unveil the top 25 here in just moments. And once we do, or once they do, I'll tell you where all the teams landed. Now, unlike the AP and coaches polls, where I start at the top, we start at the bottom and work our way up. I can't, Perky, copyright. I could get copyrighted for that, and I already have a strike on my channel. I don't want to get in trouble. Okay, the first 5 teams up are Kansas State at number 25, the Kansas State Wildcats. The North Carolina Tar Heels are at number 24, followed by the Tulane Green Wave at number 23. At 22, it's the Iowa Hawkeyes. And at number 21, you've got the Arizona Wildcats, who, by the way, are bowl eligible after beating Washington State this past weekend. So congrats to Jed Fish and the boys from Tucson, the Arizona Wildcats. So those are the first 5 teams up. You still have time to predict your top 4. Let me know what your top 4 is in the comment section. All right, so on the Chat Sports broadcast, we've got Harrison Graham and Tyler Jones. All right, here's the next 5 teams. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish comes in at number 20. Then it's the LSU Tigers, who had a tough loss at Alabama. They're at number 19. The Utah Utes are number 18. And then you've got the Oklahoma Sooners, bound for the SEC next year, at number 17. And the Kansas Jayhawks, Rock Chalk, at number 16. So if I have to predict my top 4, I think Georgia should be number 1 because they are the 2-time reigning national champions. I would put Georgia at number 1. I would move Ohio State down to 2. I would put Michigan at number 3. That's my team. And I would jump Washington into the number 4 spot and bump Florida State down. All right, next 5 teams up. The Oklahoma State Cowboys at number 15, winning the final Bedlam before Oklahoma jets off to the SEC next season. Speaking of the SEC, the Missouri Tigers are at number 14. Then you got the Tennessee Volunteers at number 13. The Oregon State Beavers at number 12. And the Louisville Cardinals taking the number 11 spot. So yeah, my 4 would be Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Washington. And then I would put Florida State at number 5 and Oregon at number 6. I don't think Texas will move into the top 6, given the fact that they struggled this past weekend against Kansas State. So I would probably keep them at number 7. But I would move Penn State into the top 10 ahead of their huge matchup with Michigan coming up on Saturday. Because I think Penn State was number 11 in last week's CFP rankings. And they will be moving into the top 10 according to the committee. Now they're about to name these teams off one by one, as they just put the graphics for 7 through 10 on the screen. And in just seconds, I'll tell you who the number 10 team in this week's rankings are. It's Penn State. Speak of the devil. The Penn State Nittany Lions move up to number 10. Again, big game at home against the Wolverines in Happy Valley on Saturday. So we got ourselves a top 10 matchup coming up this week. The Ole Miss Running Rebels come in at number 9. And they got a tough test coming up against Georgia. And they got to go to Athens and try to upset the Bulldogs, who I think now has won 26 straight games. The two-time reigning national champions have a 26-game winning streak. All right, they're going to... Okay, here's number 8 staying in the SEC. That's the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I'm predicting that the Texas Longhorns will stay at number 7. We will know in just a second here. Man, that coffee's good. All right, so number 7, I'm predicting it's going to be Texas. We'll soon know here in a moment. Yep, I was right. The Texas Longhorns stay at number 7. And so that leads us to the top 6. So again, you still got time for your top 4 and the first 2 out. Let me know in the comment section who you think will be the top 4 in the playoff. And then who will be the first 2 teams out? Also, the number 5 and number 6 teams. Still be unveiling that top 6 here in just a second. Now, I've already predicted my top 6. I said Georgia at number 1, moving Ohio State down to 2. I would keep Michigan at 3, move Washington in at number 4, which would drop Florida State to 5, and Oregon would stay put at number 6. That's my top 6 prediction. So here in a second, they'll be unveiling the top 6 of this week's college football playoff ranking. Now they're doing a little house cleaning, which in the YouTube world is plugging a sponsor. They're plugging Prize Picks right now. Many YouTube channels are sponsored by Prize Picks, including Microphone. That's an NFL channel or an NFL news channel that I frequent all the time. I'm not a gambler, though. I just like picking games for fun. I don't like putting money on anything because there's always that risk of losing money instead of winning money. So that's why I don't gamble. Okay, so recapping 7 through 25 from the bottom. Kansas State, 25 is Kansas State. Then it's North Carolina, Tulane, Iowa, and Arizona. That's 25 through 21. And then 20 through 16 is Notre Dame, LSU, Utah, Oklahoma, and Kansas. 15 through 11 is Oklahoma State, Missouri, Tennessee, Oregon State, and Louisville. Then you got Penn State at 10, Ole Miss at 9, Alabama at 8, and Texas at 7. That brings us to the top 6. All right. So the committee has kept Oregon at number 6, and Washington stays at number 5. So the Ducks remain at 6, and the Huskies, no change with them either. They stay at number 5. All right, so I said Georgia should be the number 1 team. That's coming up. Number 4, in the same spot as last week, is the Florida State Seminoles. No change with Florida State hanging at number 4. And it's going to be the same top 6. It's just that where is the order? What the order is going to be. All right, Michigan remains at number 3 with that big game with Penn State coming up. All right, so my Michigan Wolverines are at number 3. Number 2 is going to be either Georgia or Ohio State. And as I said, I projected Ohio State at number 2 and Georgia at number 1. But we shall see here in just a second here. They're about to unveil number 2. Right, you know the committee, they like to have a bunch of suspense when it comes to these rankings. Okay, the Georgia Bulldogs stay at number 2, which means the Ohio State guys are still number 1. Which again, my top 6, I had Oregon at number 6, so that's correct. I actually have Florida State dropping to 5 and moving Washington to 4. Then I had Michigan at 3. And then I had Georgia moving ahead of Ohio State into the number 1 spot. But again, the top 6, Oregon at number 6, Washington 5, Florida State 4, Michigan 3, Georgia 2, and Ohio State at number 1. So what do you think of the committee's rankings? What do you think they got right? What do you think they got wrong? Let me know in the comment section. So now that the college football playoff rankings are released, let's jump ahead to the Week 11 college football schedule and every announcer for all the games this weekend. And we do have 3 games in progress on this Tuesday night, with Central Michigan at Western Michigan on ESPNU. It began at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. That game is currently being called by Clay Matvick and Renee Eagle-Gilla. CBS Sports Network also had a game that started at 7 o'clock Eastern, and that's Ball State at Northern Illinois with Alex Del Barrio and Brock Vereen. And then the next game is coming up here in about 10-15 minutes on ESPN2 at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Ohio University at Buffalo with Jay Alter and Tom Luganville. Then you have 3 more games from the Mid-American Conference on Wednesday. On CBS Sports Network at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific is Bowling Green at Kent State with Carter Blackburn and Dante Whitner. Then at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific on ESPN2, you've got Eastern Michigan at Toledo with John Schifrin and Rocky Boyman. And at the same time on ESPNU is Akron at Miami of Ohio with Mike Corey and Dustin Fox. Then you have a couple of games on Thursday night, both at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. On ESPN, it's Virginia at Louisville, Matt Berry and Dan Mullen. And then on ESPNU, that will be Southern Miss at Louisiana Lafayette. There is no broadcast team announced for that game. They have 2 games starting late on Friday night. At 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on ESPN2 is North Texas at SMU, Anish Sharaff and Andre Ware. And on FS1 at 10:45 p.m. Eastern, 7:45 p.m. Pacific, is Wyoming at UNLV with Alex Faust and Petros Papadakis. That brings us to the Saturday portion of the schedule, starting with the early afternoon slate. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games kicking off at 12 noon Eastern at 9 a.m. Pacific. On ABC, it's Georgia Tech at Clemson with Mark Jones, Louis Riddick, and Quint Cassinet. On Fox's Big Noon Saturday, it's a top 10 showdown in the Big Ten as Michigan visits Penn State with Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. On ESPN, it's Alabama at Kentucky with Joe Tessitore and Jordan Rogers. On ESPN2, it's Tulsa at Tulane with Roy Philpott and Roddy Jones. On FS1, you've got Texas Tech at Kansas, Eric Collins and Devin Gardner. On ESPNU, it's Yale at Princeton, Eric Freedy and Jack Ford. On the SEC network, it's Vanderbilt at South Carolina, Taylor Zarzar and Matt Stinchcomb. On BTN, Indiana at Illinois, little border rivalry there in Champaign, with Connor Onion and Matt Millen. On the ACC network, it's Virginia Tech at Boston College with George Sedano and Orlando Franklin. Oh, by the way, Boston College is also bowl eligible. On CBS Sports Network, it's Holy Cross at Army West Point. There is no broadcast team announced for that game. Streaming exclusively on Peacock at 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific is Maryland at Nebraska with Paul Burmeister and Kyle Rudolph. And streaming on ESPN Plus at 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific is Temple at South Florida with Ted Emmerich and Patrick Murray. At 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, streaming on ESPN Plus, Old Dominion at Liberty with Matt Warner and Joe Josh. At 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, on the CW, it's NC State at Wake Forest with Tom Wormy and James Bates. Also at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Pac-12 network, Arizona at Colorado, Ted Robinson and Yogi Roth. And then you've got 4 games streaming on ESPN Plus at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Appalachian State at Georgia State with Matt Stewart and Sam Crenshaw. Then you've got Connecticut at James Madison, Memphis at Charlotte, and Troy at Louisiana Monroe. There are no broadcast teams announced for those 3 games. Then at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, on KJZZ TV in Salt Lake City and streaming on Mountain West Conference Digital is Nevada at Utah State. There is no broadcast team announced for this game. And then you have a couple of games on ESPN Plus at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. You've got Baylor at Kansas State with Noel Reed and Barrett Brooks. And Sam Houston at Louisiana Tech. There is no broadcast team announced for that game. Now to the late afternoon portion of the schedule. You got a bunch of games at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 games. 13 games kicking off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific. On ABC, it's Miami at Florida State, Sean McDonough and Greg McElroy. Excuse me. On the Home Depot SEC on CBS, Tennessee at Missouri with Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson. On Fox, it's Utah at Washington with Jason Benetti and Brock Heward. On NBC, you've got Minnesota at Purdue. There is no broadcast team announced for that game. I'm assuming that's going to be Jack Collinsworth and Jason Garrett. I do not know. I'll have to tune in Saturday to find out. On ESPN, it's Oklahoma State at UCF, Mike Monaco and Robert Griffin III. Then on FS1, it's Northwestern at Wisconsin with Chris Myers and Robert Smith. On ESPNU, you've got North Carolina Central at Howard. No broadcast team has been announced. On BTN, it's Rutgers at Iowa with Corey Provis and Jake Butt. On the ACC network, it's Pittsburgh and Syracuse. They're playing this game at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx with Chris Cotter and Mark Herzlich. On CBS Sports Network, you've got UAB at Navy with John Sadak and Randy Cross. And then you have 3 more games on ESPN Plus at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific. Florida International at Middle Tennessee, New Mexico State at Western Kentucky, and Texas State at Coastal Carolina. There are no broadcast teams announced for those 3 games. At 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on ESPN2, you've got Washington State at California with Beth Mowins and Kirk Morrison. On the SEC network, it's Auburn at Arkansas, Dave Neal and Derek Mason. Streaming on ESPN Plus at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific is East Carolina at Florida Atlantic. There is no broadcast team announced for this game. Then at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, also on ESPN Plus, Arkansas State at South Alabama. And again, there is no broadcast team announced for this game either. A half hour later at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific on the Pac-12 network, it's Stanford at Oregon State with Roxy Bernstein and Max Brown. It looks like Fox will have a quadruple header on Saturday as we move into the evening portion of the schedule. You've got 5 games at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. On Fox, it's Game 3 of their quadruple header with West Virginia at Oklahoma, Jeff Levering and Mark Helfrich. On ESPN, it's Ole Miss at Georgia, Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit. On FS1, it's Cincinnati at Houston, Alex Faust and Petros Papadakis. On CBS Sports Network, it's San Diego State at Colorado State, Dave Ryan and Malik Zaire. And on the NFL Network, it's Georgia Southern at Marshall with Jason Ross Jr. and Tioka Jackson. And then you have 5 more games kicking off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. On ABC's Saturday Night Football, it's Texas at TCU with Dave Pasch, Dusty Dvorak, and Tom Luginbill. On Big Ten Saturday night on NBC, it's Michigan State at Ohio State with Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge. On ESPN2, you've got Mississippi State at Texas A&M with Brian Custer and Rod Gilmore. On ESPNU, It's Rice at UTSA with Drew Carter and Dustin Fox. And on the SEC network, you've got Florida at LSU with Tom Hart, Jordan Rogers, and Cole Kubelic. At 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on the ACC network, it's the Battle of Tobacco Road as Duke visits North Carolina with Wes Durham and Tim Hasselbeck. An hour after that, at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the Pac-12 network, is Arizona State at UCLA, J.B. Long and Lincoln Kennedy. On FS1 at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, is New Mexico at Boise State with Guy Haberman and Charles Arbuckle. At 10:15 Eastern, 7:15 Pacific on ESPN, Iowa State at BYU, Dave Fleming and Brock Osweiler. On Fox, this is pretty much Pac-12 after dark, if you will, at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, USC at Oregon, Tim Brendel and Spencer Tillman. Also at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific on CBS Sports Network, Fresno State at San Jose State with Rich Waltz and Aaron Taylor. Final game of the night is at 11:59 p.m. Eastern, 8:59 p.m. Pacific on Hawaii pay-per-view and Team One Sports, and that's Air Force at Hawaii. And there is no broadcast team announced for this game. Okay, that is it for the Week 11 college football television schedule and the second unveiling of the college football playoff rankings. All right, Matt Schwartz, sorry about that, says, I don't care where they have the Buckeyes ranked as long as they win and they are in. All right. Sounds good, Mark or Matt. And I didn't project to move Ohio State down to number 2 because I'm a Michigan fan. I just figured that Georgia would be the number 1 team in the country, mainly because they're the 2-time reigning national champions. So there's that. Anyway, that is it for tonight's unveiling of the college football playoff rankings, plus the Week 11 college football television schedule. We'll be back tomorrow with the week that was as we run down all 14 games from week number 9 in the National Football League. And man, what a week it was. That's coming out tomorrow, so join me for that. And again, the final 2023 Major League Baseball standings and league leaders is also up on my channel, so feel free to watch that if you want. Okay, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.